I don't know if there's a better staff in the nation than Coach O and the LSU Tigers when it comes to the transfer portal. Now, maybe part of this is the fact that, look, I'm obviously not tuned into other schools the same way that we are LSU. So there are certainly other schools that I'm sure have managed to use the portal effectively. But when you look at the hit rate of LSU in the portal, especially considering how kind of sketchy talent evaluation can be, it becomes pretty astounding the job that Coach O and this team has done, and the way that they have been able to supplement recruiting classes and fill very targeted needs with players who don't just add bodies to the mix, but actually become legitimate starters. And again, it looks like LSU added someone yesterday in new Clemson transfer linebacker Mike Jones.
Mike Jones. Who?
That's right. Also, if anybody ever says LS who to you again, you now have the perfect response. You just yell Mike Jones at that person's face, and you have immediately taken away one of the greatest and most debasing attacks that people like to throw at LSU. But yeah, man, look, this is a cat who is a redshirt sophomore, so he's very young. As a redshirt freshman, started 7 games for Clemson, replacing Isaiah Simmons. Had 30 tackles, 4 TFLs, 4 pass breaks, a forced fumble, 2 INTs, 3 years of eligibility left, and can play immediately. You're basically getting, this is almost like getting a big-time high school recruit that has just had Clemson seasoning put on him. That's got some actual in-game experience. And you're getting that guy at a position of need. That's pretty wild to me. It's also wild to me that when you look at trying to combat the spread, right, the modern offensive theory that you're dealing with in college football nowadays, when you're trying to combat the spread, what is more impactful or important than a great coverage linebacker? It's the reason why you're seeing, it's the reason why Levante David's praises are being sung throughout the NFL right now. It's one of the main reasons why the Bucs were able to do what they did against the Chiefs on Sunday, right? I know that, look, the pass rush for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was probably the main source of success, okay? The safeties, that pass rush and freeing up the Bucs to play too deep and allow the safeties to take away Tyreek Hill in the big play, also hugely responsible for the success. But right behind the pass rush, the group that had to show up the most to make that defensive game plan in the Super Bowl work were the linebackers, right? And so it's Devin White and Levante David guarding the tight end, guarding Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield. That's where mismatches are created. And so having a pass coverage linebacker is an incredible asset, an incredible strength, especially now in the modern theory of football. And now for a second year in a row, LSU has gone and gotten somebody who looks like one of the nation's top coverage linebackers. I mean, that is not exaggerated. Look at what Jabril Cox did last year. And it's interesting because like everybody else on this LSU defense, I don't think that Jabril Cox was always put in the best position to succeed. And so because of that, I think that LSU fans maybe don't appreciate just how good he could have been if this defense hadn't been such an absolute train wreck last season. And so now you had another great cover guy. And again, it's at a position that has a lot of question marks. We were just talking before the show, Moose. Was the linebacker group the worst group on last year's defense, right? It's either them or the safeties. Do you have a strong take either way?
I kind of agree with what we came up with it being the linebackers. They were passive, and it affected the rest of the play of the rest of the defense, really.
Yeah, so that's an important point, and something that definitely showed up on film a lot last year, is that everything on defense, like anything else, football's the ultimate team sport. Everything is interconnected. There are ripple effects when one position group is struggling, right? If your pass rush can't get home, it makes coverage harder, yada, 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 et cetera. The linebackers cannot explain the mental miscues in that secondary out of that safety group, just completely losing receivers. But when you look at some of the run fits and how horrible those were last season, and some of the success that teams had on big rushing plays, that traces back to the linebackers, and the linebackers making it awkward, not just for themselves, but for the safeties. Like Jacoby Stevens is an excellent run-stopping safety. He couldn't make a read because the linebackers were never forcing the running back into a decision point. And if you're not making them make a choice, well, then they can go one of two ways. How's the safety supposed to know where to fill? And so the linebackers, that's kind of your heart and soul of the defense, right? You always talk about being strong up the middle. A lot of times the Mike linebacker is kind of like your quarterback of the defense. So when you struggle there's going to be huge ripple effects. And you saw it last season. Also, I think that Bo Pelini, on top of being a bad D coordinator, I don't know that he was really good at developing or coaching linebackers at all either. So now look at the talent that you had. So again, this is something that Coach O and company have been excellent at in his tenure. Identifying areas of need and then going out and just finding creative solutions. You need linebacker. Look, I still think Damone Clark might have the biggest bounce back year out of anyone, right? There's still a reason why they gave him number 18. He was showing them something there. I know that physically he is an absolute monster. Like, his physical potential is massive. So Damone Clark may still be very good. Micah Baskerville was one of the few bright spots on last year's defense. When he came in, he was the difference to them at least getting some stops. That's where you were last year. You just needed some stops, and Baskerville was the key to making that entire situation better. You have young talents there as well. So, I'm not saying that these new guys are going to 100% come in and be the starters, but why not do everything you can to just try to add talent so that you throw against the wall, and then whoever, eventually someone's going to stick. And so you go out and you get the number one JUCO linebacker in the nation in Devontae Strong, or a guy Bug Strong. And now you go out and you get a redshirt sophomore from Clemson that has already started 7 games and looks physically and in his skill set like the exact coverage linebacker that you so desperately need to combat the spread of Alabama, Lane Kiffin in Ole Miss, Dan Mullen in Florida. Mike Jones go a long way towards helping out in this regard. And let's just look at and give credit to, this is not the exception for LSU and Orgeron. This is now par for the course, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, you needed a kicker. What did you do? You went and found Cole Tracy. You needed a center last year. You went and found Liam Shanahan. You needed a quarterback. You went and found Joe Burrow. But it goes beyond that, right? You have Jabril Cox, Braden Fajoko, Thad Moss, even a guy like Terrence Alexander, right? Not great, but he started and played. Like every single, and this is where I always want to be open to kind of challenging or reinterpreting my core held beliefs. And the very surface level take that I always had on the transfer market was, oh, they must be in the transfer market for a reason, right? And it's a logic that makes sense, right? I mean, you probably left because you couldn't start, you couldn't do this or that. But what we're learning now is that the reasons why people may want to leave are varied. It can be many. And it's not always just you weren't good enough to play. Never forget, Alvin Kamara transferred from Alabama to Tennessee and then still didn't start at Tennessee, okay? So sometimes situations can just be weird. Joe Burrow had to transfer out of Ohio State. And look at what he went on to do. So I don't know that I think they're in the transfer portal for a reason. I don't really think that logic that I used to espouse, I don't really think that holds much water anymore. I think it's all about being discerning when you're going to recruit these kids and knowing, okay, who is in the portal because they can't play and who is in the portal for the multitude of other reasons that they could be. And that is exactly what LSU has been so adept at, is finding those guys that are not just bodies to fill the room, but guys that will start and play immediately and give you quality minutes. Remember Jabril Cox pick 6 in his first game? They should have won if they'd had any form of defense. So congratulations. And look, and now you add to this class. This 2021 class just gets better and better. Like we said, despite it all, despite the 5-5, the bad headlines, Rick Gilbert leaving, the whole team's leaving, Coach O's lost the locker room. This offseason has been an exercise in admitting where you screwed up, where you need help, and then finding the path to accomplish those goals, right? You made the coaching changes now. Obviously, the coaching changes have helped to encourage some of these recent guys. Brian Thomas Jr. talked about it. Mickey Joseph still, he is the reason why. Brian Thomas Jr. is coming to LSU. But the hiring of Peets and Mangus and the relationship therein, that played a key role as well. They wanted to see who was going to be, who's going to be developing me. That makes so much sense. And that's why this linebacker position, now freed of whatever the hell Bo Pelini was doing last year, looks like they might be the group set up for the biggest turnaround. Because I don't know if there was a group that underperformed to their talent level as much as linebacker last year. And now you bring in Blake Baker, a guy with an excellent linebacker resume. Again, and a guy who has coordinator experience for years and years on the major NCAA level. A guy who's been, again, battling at the forefront of modern theory against the spread. And so now he gets to develop further. Mike Jones, Damone Clark, Micah Baskerville, Navontek Strong, old Bug Strong. I think there's plenty of reason for excitement. And again, congrats to LSU hitting, I believe at least. We'll see if this all plays out. But it doesn't even matter, right? Even if Mike Jones doesn't end up as a starter, this is just a hell of a talent to add to that room. And if he does get beat out, well, that means that you're probably in a pretty good spot because somebody had to play better than somebody who's already played on this level. Again, 7 games, started 7 games for Clemson last year, couple picks, few pass breakups. This guy has the ability to come in and play for LSU immediately. All right, coming up next here on Off the Bench, we will talk to Chef Michael Johnson. Go ahead and get your hashtag Munchies questions in the Bayou Ford chat. And we'll be back with more OTB.